Dating sims are hard to explain. You might associate dating sims with bright pink colors and individual anime girls representing character tropes, or you might associate it with a deeper story uncovered through character growth and uncovering the secrets or backstory of a cast of characters who knows more than they let on to. Or you might associate dating sims with birds. Or it might be a chance to see boobs. Also, hello, welcome to my eclectic little art corner. The dating sim genre is so diverse, and by that I mean you never know what you're gonna get, because dating sims are often completely different genres. Some are romance, slice of life, comedy, sci-fi, horror. It's such a diverse genre that you have people who genuinely want to tell dating stories, people who want to tell stories through a dating format, people making them as a joke, and companies jumping on the bandwagon as order to make an ad? That's happened. There are even some co-op dating sims in case you want your friends to judge your taste in partners. And for a genre that people claim to be just for straight, lonely teenage boys, there's a lot of diversity coming out of recent games, possibly more than any other game genre. You can pick pronouns, queer romance is an option, and there are many different people and life experiences. There's even dating sims and anti-dating sims with aromantic and asexual characters. But that doesn't dismiss the issues that are still in the genre, and the sometimes accurate criticisms of these games and their fan bases. Plenty of games utilize objectifying and dehumanizing principles against their characters. And I don't mean exclusively female characters, because some games with male characters do the same thing. There's a lot of different dating sims, just like there's a lot of different people who want a lot of different things. A lot of games might include romanceable NPCs as a side story that isn't necessary to the game. Take Stardew Valley, a game where you build relationships with NPCs, but only if you want to. You also aren't forced to romance any character, you can choose to just be friends with all of them. There's also not really a good or a bad ending, because the game keeps going even if you break up, or even divorce one of the characters. This is a stark contrast to the more traditional dating sims, which will give you a bad ending if you fail to romance a character. This type of dating sim is probably for more of a casual player. Even if the mechanics play out like a usual dating sim, it's smaller and more concentrated. Players that want a longer playtime committed to this style will probably go more for the visual novel. The mechanics might be somewhere along the lines of giving gifts or dialogue options. It's not very complicated mechanics, but that's part of the visual novel genre. If you're looking for more complicated mechanics, there are games with mini-games within the dating sim. Though honestly, by that logic, a Mario game could be considered a dating sim. But there are plenty of games using different mini-games or full-on levels in order to go on a date with a character. So what do the mechanics say about the dating sim? One common way to win over the affection of a 2D love is to throw gifts at them until they love you. This is common in games where the goal is to fill up a heart meter. Heart meter romances are usually ongoing until you fill up the affection meter, possibly in a time limit. Instead of multiple endings or complex paths, this type of game tends to let players fill up the heart meter until they can get a good ending. Okay, gift giving is obviously important in dating, and it's a valid way of showing affection. Even if some people might consider it shallow, it's still a valid way of expressing your affection towards someone as well as showing they're special, important, and cared for. Dating sims handle this in different ways. Sometimes you have to find what your love interest would like the most, and sometimes you just give them generic gifts. Again, there's nothing wrong with either approach. Giving something that you know someone will cherish and value for their life is very important, and it's as important as finding random things to show that you're thinking about them. That's of course depending on the relationship you're in and what your partner enjoys more. But gift giving in a video game is a bit different. There's often a cap to how many things you can give them. You might be able to give 1 on a date, 2 a week, or you might have to pay $500 for a leaf. But even with the cap, giving your date excessive amounts of gifts can be seen as love bombing. The International Journal of Interdisciplinary Approaches in Psychology describes love bombing as a controlling and manipulative tactic most often used by narcissists and abusive individuals. They seek to quickly obtain affection and attention before tearing the victims down. This article defines some examples of love bombing as lavish gifts, excessive flattery, frequent texting filled with compliments, and expectation for immediate response. These things aren't necessarily bad on their own, but the goal of love bombing is to create an emotional dependency and attachment and eventual control. Granted, an important part of love bombing is the negative behavior after. Isolating the victim from friends and family, and also expecting to have most of the victim's attention for your own time. It is also incredibly narcissistic, as it's making yourself the biggest aspect of someone else's life. But when they're a character in a video game, you kind of are. You are the main character of the story. While you aren't necessarily pushing the relationship any faster, you are bombarding your love interest with gifts and affection in order to raise their heart meter. That seems pretty adjacent to love bombing. This is probably why most of the time gift giving isn't used as a main mechanic. It's more transactional in games. And by transactional, I'd like to state that these games like to reward a certain type of mentality. If you give a gift to someone, they owe you a deeper relationship or sex. You also may have heard this referred to as nice guy syndrome. The term derives for guys who think they are nice and therefore deserve a partner. Obviously, this mentality is wrong. It's the equivalent of saying you can buy someone's love and affection. Of course, this point rings a bit hollow in the sense of dating sims, because you bought this game on Steam for $20 for that exact reason. Many games might require, but more often will just encourage gift giving as a way to fill the heart meter. Very few games exclusively use gift giving though. Most dating sims pair gift giving up with other mechanics. Gift giving often isn't a good basis for an emotional connection, so gift giving works better as a secondary mechanic, which I think is a healthy approach to gift giving. Gift giving in dating sims usually takes a backseat to the less expensive option, dialogue. Probably the most common way of winning over your love interest is through picking the right dialogue option. Again, words of affirmation is a valid love language. You want to be supported by someone who's important to you, and saying kind things to your partner is a nice thing to do. But that kindness immediately goes away the second that there's an ulterior motive behind it. Because as much as I'd like to believe that every player will pick the option that will make the character the happiest because they don't want to see the character sad, the game will build it as something that will determine your relationship with that character. And so if your relationship is dependent on you two liking the same things or having a specific dynamic, I mean, yeah, you might not like video games, but you might as well say you do if it means getting close to Yusung. You may not do drugs, but you don't want Audrey to think you're lame. You might not want kids, but are you really gonna tell, oh, no, that's gonna cause problems later in the relationship? To its credit, Emily is a Way too actually addresses lying in a relationship to get with a character and how terrible it is to do. If you give one answer to one of the girls and a different answer to the other, that's gonna bite you in the ass later down the line. The same way that it would in real life. Both girls will be reasonably upset if you claimed that you wanted something or you were someone and then you told the other girl something else. If they were meaning to form a relationship with you because they thought that you had things in common and that you wanted the same things out of life and then it turned out you lied to them, they have every right to be upset with you, and they are. Furthermore, they'll be upset that you said something that they wanted to hear in order to force a connection. That's probably because Emily's Away and its sequels want to recreate the feeling of online dating as someone in the 2000s. But most dating sims really don't give you consequences for lying. In fact, some encourage it. On one hand, it's totally valid to take interest in someone for having things in common with each other, but when a game's mechanics rely on you having things in common with a character, the player is forced to lie. And what's worse, story games that focus on character arcs usually cause the player in trying to initiate that arc. Once again, supporting your partner is a good thing, but that should not be your reliability in a relationship. And getting with a character in hope they will change feels a lot like trying to fix them. For example, let's look at a few different games. I won't spoil anything, but I will go into detail. Mystic Messenger is a game where everyone is grieving over a lost one. All the characters have some flaw attached to this tragedy that manifests as an obsession with one thing or the other. Your objective when pursuing these characters is to cut off that obsession and get them to become happy with you, losing that flaw once you reach the good ending. Except most bad endings show them spiraling into an unhealthy lifestyle. And to get a good ending, the player has to constantly support and comfort these characters. giving advice no matter what danger they themselves are in. That's not healthy. Your main priority should be your own health. Others' mental health should not rely on you. And I'm sorry to call out Mystic Messenger specifically. I think it has a really good meta story going on. The issue is it does completely fall into this trap of I can fix him. A lot of dating sims do, especially those that have heavy character arcs as the plot of the main game. In these games, not only is the mental well-being placed on the shoulders of the player, but the player is dating these characters in order to fix them. If this is the main mechanic of the game, chances are the relationship will mirror codependency. Codependency is described as a relationship that enables self-destructive behaviors. A definition of codependency does differ from source to source, but a common theme is controlling or fixing a partner's problems, commonly seen as caretaking. Some researchers define codependency as a learned helplessness by one partner. The point is, it's part of a one-sided relationship where all the problems are placed on one party, and some studies show that it's commonly associated with gender roles. It's taught that women should caretake and enjoy caretaking in their relationship. Mystic Messenger is a game that perfectly plays into excusing men's actions, while the player, who plays as a female character, is given the burden of acting in a caretaking manner to heal these characters. It's a harmful stigma, especially considering that as recently back as the 90s and the early 2000s, it was under debate if women want a codependent relationship. Carol Tarvis in the 90s wrote that the normalization of codependent relationships exists because the model is based on qualifying dependent male behaviors as normal while dependent female behaviors as deviant. In other words, it was accepted for a man to rely on a woman to fix his emotional stresses, but women were expected to carry their own weight and support their partners and their problems as well. In a study done in 2000, it was found that women were more likely to be in a codependent relationship than men, or at the very least, women were more likely to acknowledge codependency in their relationship due to alcoholism and addiction being considered more acceptable in men. There's a perpetuation of codependency in dating sims, a lot of them being female-orientated. This reinforces the stigma that women might enjoy codependent relationships, when in actuality, the reason women are more accepting of codependent relationships is because of expectations placed on them from a young age. A lot of players might back up their interest in a character by saying that they have a good arc. And while that is a good reason to like a character in a story, it doesn't quite work for dating sims, because that's not a good way to date someone. It makes it seem like they are a challenge to overcome, rather than a person that you appreciate and want to date in the first place. And though it may seem cheap, in a dating sim the solution should probably be to either tone down the issue the characters are going through, or to make it clear that the decisions, the personage, and the mental health of one character does not rely on the player. That form of dependency is unhealthy for everyone involved. Once again, you are not the main character of a relationship. It certainly does feel that way in dating sims, especially when you're given levels and minigames to complete. Obviously, this mechanic doesn't relate as much to really dating. There's unfortunately no stage in dating where you have to complete a bullet hell. This is probably the hardest mechanic to analyze because it's mainly playing a game, which isn't too harmful unless you equate your love interest to a game you must beat, but the same could be said about the entire genre. What I want to focus on is the analogy of games to dating. Because even in-game, there's an understanding that these are analogies for dating, unless of course you manage to get someone to sleep with you by your epic gamer skills, which I absolutely wish was the case. I couldn't get away from this topic without talking about one of the most famous and horniest dating sims out there, Honeypop. There are some of the previous mechanics in there. You give them gifts and lie about yourself in order to make them like you, but the main mechanic is... it's playing Candy Crush, which is an analogy for going on a date. The little tokens on the board represent aspects of different forms of attraction, implying you do or say something that would cause a type of attraction. The tokens represent romance, talent, sexuality, flirtation, sentiment, and passion. Passion just serves as a point multiplier. Every girl has one type of token that she likes the most or the least. So on a date, you want to match the affection tokens that your date likes the most. And that's surprisingly a good metaphor for dating. Hear me out. Every girl has one thing that she likes more than the others. So what is an affection token in this metaphor? Considering matches give affection, I'm going to categorize these tokens as affection styles, or more commonly known as love languages. That's right, each token type correlates to a love language. Even if it is a very different version of love languages, and a very sexualized one at that, it definitely correlates to how you would show affection. Sexuality can be equated to physical touch, romance to quality time, talent to acts of service, flirtation to words of affirmation, and sentiment for gift giving. For example, sentiment is the token that allows you to give gifts, and I feel like flirtation and words of affirmation is fairly self-explanatory. Talent and acts of service could mean you're good at doing acts of service. Romance and quality time can be equated to taking them out on dates and having meaningful moments between the two of you. And sexuality and physical touch, because what else could it be? Now there is the fact that the 5 love languages were originally created with a lack of scientific evidence. Created by Gary Chapman in 2010, there was a significant lack of empirical evidence. For those unfamiliar, Chapman's theory says that while everyone holds his coined 5 love languages, physical touch, quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, and gift giving, there's a primary love language that each person holds in high regard. Any one of those 5 love languages can be someone's primary love language. There was a study performed in 2016 performed by Universitas Diana Piera to test the validity of Chapman's love languages using survey. Chapman's argument states that the primary love language of a person is determined throughout their lives, mimicked or learned through friends, family, romantic partners, and the people we surround ourselves with. This study from 2016 was done with a test group from Indonesia, and according to the test runners, their responses tied back to their culture and family. The majority of the group valued words of affirmation above any other love language. This result was prevalent for both men and women. The conductors of this experiment used cultural studies to show that verbal compliments are rare while criticism is very common through Indonesian family environment, academic setting, and discussion forums. Linking to our research findings, the habit of providing fewer praises or verbal appreciation may influence participants to appreciate more to the verbal praises. Affirming words from their partner would be highly valued and make them feel loved. This is evidence pointing in the direction that Chapman's idea of a primary love language that is learned and instilled from within relationships we build is not unfounded. So, Honeypop's use of a favorite token type might yield some weight when comparing it to a primary love language. The girls in Honeypop have one love language that they really appreciate and ones that they are less comfortable with. This is why their favorite token type earns more affection points, while their least favorite earns less. Heck, Honeypop 2 even has baggage that often relates directly to affection tokens. For example, if you play a sexuality match on a sheepish girl, it will count against you, setting up a boundary of when is and when isn't okay for physical intimacy or affection. You also have independent people who need a certain level of passion before you can give them a gift. Some people you're dating might be uncomfortable with gifts, or they won't want them often. Girls might not accept certain gifts. They might have different energy than others. They might even have medical issues that affect dating. Honestly, this is a good mechanic, as your dates are setting boundaries and there will be consequences if you cross them. Is any of this intentional? No, absolutely not. The rest of the game is about lying your way into these women's pants. Or lack thereof. But understanding what your partner likes or purposefully adapting to those likes to make your partner happy is a good thing to do. All of this can be implied from a minigame, but the meaning can also be completely lost when you have people matching colors to be able to see the anime titties. Can boundaries and love languages really be addressed in a game? Well, I should hope so, considering what dating has become in the modern age. Gamification is a trend that is taking apps by storm. I'm using the word gamification to define taking a concept and putting it inside the structure of a video game in order to get people to play it. Take apps like Duolingo. You gain a streak in order to gain interaction on a daily basis. You get rewards for completing goals, and lessons are treated like levels. This is gamification of learning, and it works fairly effectively. It's a good strategy for both the app and the learning process so that the user creates a habit to sit down and use the app for a few minutes every day. Of course, a lot of apps use the same mechanics without the promise of education. So they're just creating habits that feed into themselves. For example, doom scrolling. It's a mechanic that lets the user scroll endlessly, overall encouraging endless usage of their app. So what does it mean for dating when dating apps start utilizing doom scrolling? Swiping left and right is the main mechanic of dating apps. I use the word mechanic because dating apps act as a game. And I think that can be seen because a lot of dating apps use the same mechanics that dating sims do. For one, doom scrolling in a dating app often comes with a pay-to-win tactic. Tinder offers you a certain amount of swipes a day before it offers you a membership which offers you unlimited swipes. Hinge offers you a certain amount of roses a day before you run out, unless you pay to receive more roses and send them to as many people as you want. An article from the British Sociological Association by Carolina Bandielli and Alessandro Gondini refers to the tactic used in dating apps as the commodification of intimacy, emphasizing a logic of entertainment that gamifies practices of relation shopping. This gamification treats people similarly to levels that you can unlock through paying. You can choose to unlock new routes and dialogue options through giving the app your money. This structure dehumanizes people through capitalism, treating people as a pay-to-win game by taxing interactions through an app. Dating apps capitalize on the market of romance, similarly to how dating sims do. What's more is dating sims have begun to emulate dating apps. There are now games based on the gamification of dating. And why? Is there something genuinely addicting or satisfying in the format of dating apps? We have proof to suggest yes. A study done on Tinder, published by the Journal of Behavioral Addiction, stated, finally, the PTUS used in the study is based on the component model of addiction, so that an elevated score on the scale could imply that the person presents an addictive pattern of Tinder use. In this context, excessive Tinder use could be considered a behavioral addiction, whether a distinct one or a variant of sex-based addiction or internet addiction. Tinder follows many of the same patterns that video games and social media use to suck players in. They're already imitating video game mechanics, but now video games are imitating dating apps. It's an endless loop. When there is a reaction, there is an equal opposite reaction. For every dating sim that is groundbreaking and lets players explore their own identity in a harmless atmosphere, there's a dating sim that over-sexualizes its characters and teaches the players to lie and cheat to win the game. Media literacy is important now more than ever, with the overproduction and overconsumption of media. We want to be aware of how video games affect our views of dating, especially given the gamification of dating and the game tactics used in dating apps. What I'm saying is that dating sims are fun. It's a fun time. But you need to be aware of what ideology they're reinforcing and rewarding. I will tell you with full certainty that there are dating sims out there that will objectify and sexualize characters and reward the player for doing so. And the people who genuinely enjoy these games for their intended purpose might need to relook at their views of dating and what they expect from dating and how they treat people while they're dating. Granted, I'm not a psychologist, I just have way too many hours in Stardew Valley, and we don't live in a world where video games and our ideas of dating and sex are completely separate. As long as we can still form meaningful and emotional connections with our fellow human beings, I think we can do whatever the hell we want with our anime boys and girls on our computers. Weird topic, but I'm weird. If you want to hear about one dating sim specifically, go ahead and pop it in the comments. Mystic Messenger is certainly an interesting one. I might do something on Honey Pop later, I'm gonna be honest. That is a fascinating game. I've never played it before. But based on the mechanics, it seems interesting, and the characters. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you continue to have meaningful relationships. I hope you enjoy the weird relationships you have in your computer as well. Let me know what dating sim you want to hear about next. I'm open to new suggestions. I'm open to anything from this video. Hit me up. Okay, thanks, bye!